So we haven't had a new Batman game in a while, and while this isn't exactly the same thing, Gotham Knights is here. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 things you need to know about Gotham Knights. Starting off with number 10, the basics of the game. Gotham Knights is an open-world, third-person action game that comes to us in the shadow of the legendary Batman Arkham series, and in many ways, it is pretty similar, but from everything we now know, there's also some pretty obvious differences. So this is an original story. Batman and Commissioner Gordon, both dead, and it's up to 4 members of the Bat family to continue the investigation that Batman started and solve the mystery of who killed him and why. Now, instead of playing as a single character for the entire game, you get the choice of playing as Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin, or Red Hood. They all have unique playstyles and different movesets, different traversal powers. They're not just like 4 different Batman skins. Now, instead of being developed by Rocksteady, the guys who made the previous Batman games, well, all except one, it's being made by the guys that made the one that isn't by them, WB Games Montreal, who made the, to be frank, a little bit underrated Batman Arkham Origins. Now, the big thing that I think is on everyone's mind when they hear Batman is dead is Batman actually dead? We don't know the answer. I have suspicions, but the developers are swearing up and down that yes, it's not a fake out. Bruce Wayne is actually dead. DEAD, dead for real. Now, I take this with a grain of salt. Superhero stuff. Like, remember how long Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were swearing that they weren't in the new Spider-Man movie? Pretty convincingly, might I add. Or, like, let's go back to Batman Arkham Knight, where Rocksteady really convinced everybody that the Arkham Knight was a completely new character. So I'm skeptical that he's actually dead, but it could go either way. And number 9, this is not an Arkhamverse games. Now, it looks similar to the Arkham games, but WB has confirmed in multiple sources, including their own FAQ, that the game is not part of the Arkhamverse. It's a standalone game with its own story, its own characters, and while there might be some little hints or Easter eggs, it's safe to assume that the game is supposed to be in its own continuity, which, yes, is a little confusing because it's a game that came out after Arkham Knight, where Bruce Wayne supposedly died in the end, but the death was not under these same circumstances in this game, so I think that that's a pretty hard piece of evidence this is genuinely its own continuity. Does that mean Batman's actually dead? I don't know. And number 8 is co-op, and this is one of the major selling points of this game. The game supports drop-in, drop-out 2-player online co-op, which they are describing as seamless. Now, apparently, co-op partners will be completely untethered. You can go wherever, do whatever, with or without your partner. Now, to make this work with the game's experience system, co-op partners who are at different levels will scale so that they're basically an almost match, and enemies will also scale to match the team's overall strength. The game doesn't limit who you can play as either. Both players can be the same hero if they want to, and you don't actually have to do co-op. You can go through the entire game solo if you want, or you can sometimes play with a partner, sometimes not. The game's supposed to let you play however you want to, unless you want to play local co-op, because that ain't there. So almost however you choose to. Probably the most interesting thing I found about this is how the progression works for both the host and the guest. If you play through a dungeon or a crime with a partner and get ahead of your normal progress, then when you get to that part in your own game, you just get a pop-up asking if you want to replay that sequence, and you can select no and skip it because you already did it. Now, how unlockables and gear progression work in co-op, no idea. It all sounds pretty good, but we'll also see how it ends up getting implemented. And number 7 is the combat and gameplay. Combat we've seen is pretty similar to the Arkham games so far, which zero problem with that. Great combat in those games, but there are some pretty noteworthy differences. There isn't just a single punch button anymore. There's a light and a heavy attack button, ranged attacks, and a dodge move. You do your dodge right, you initiate a perfect dodge, which opens up the enemy for a damage and counter attack. There's also a momentum bar, which charges as you build a combo. When the meter fills, you can spend it on various unlockable cooldown abilities, kind of like God of War, or dare we say it, a Souls-like. I wouldn't classify this as a Souls-like, just to be completely clear. But there's a lot of variety in the momentum attacks. There's this simple area of effect blast. You can summon drones. There's like a heavy damaging beatdown attack, interrupting moves, stuff like that. Now you got some action RPG elements. There's another RPG mechanic getting implemented that we've seen a whole lot of over the last while, which is crafting. Purpose is still kind of vague at the moment, but it looks like this is how you build new gear and costumes. You collect various bits of loot. I would assume this is how you spend it, but the whole system's kind of a big question mark at the moment. So we will have to kind of wait and see exactly how this all fits together. And number 6 is the villains. It's a Batman game, so of course you're going to want to know what the villains are. In the various trailers, we've seen a few major villain groups, but it's pretty obvious they're leaving some surprises for us in the final game. We do know about Mr. Freeze, a new take on Harley Quinn, who's a little older, maybe a little more dangerous. Clayface, who seems to be spawning like a whole gang of zombie-like clay monsters. And then also the Court of Owls, who seem to be the primary villains of the game. A relatively new group of villains created by Scott Snyder in either Batman, the new 52 issue 2 or 3, depending on who you ask. The Court of Owls are like a secret collective of rich Gotham families who secretly control the city and use these assassins called Talons to dispose of their enemies. They kind of remind me of Dishonored for whatever reason in aesthetic. Those are the main bad guys, but we see Penguin, Kirk Langstrom, aka Man-Bat, get a mention. Got a pig-masked guy in the villains trailer. His name is Professor Pig, P-Y-G. I'm pretty sure he's just a random goon, though. We don't know if Joker's going to be in the game. Have no idea. It is a separate continuity, so Joker's death from Arkham City, it didn't happen here. So, I mean, it's possible. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's possible. We do know Mark Hamill loves working. However, the devs have claimed that Joker is not in the game. I got no idea, though. I'm sure they're holding off on revealing at least a few bad guys, though. At number 5 is skill trees. Unlike the upgrades of the Arkham series, Gotham Knights has a more traditional skill tree system, similar to the ones found in games like Borderlands. Each character has 4 skill trees they can put points into, unlocks new momentum abilities, new skills, or does more mundane things like increase their passive damage, health, critical hit chances. 3 of the skill trees for each character unlock normally, but the 4th, called Knighthood, seems to only appear after a certain major story event. And instead of unlocking skills from this tree with experience, you have to complete challenges to unlock these abilities. Some of the best abilities are apparently locked behind the Knighthood tree, particularly new traversal abilities like gliding for Batgirl, or special abilities and certain ultimates. Now, thankfully, you can switch characters whenever you want. Your progression remains the same. So if you select a new character, you still have access to the same amount of skill points as every other character, because they clearly want you to play around with the different heroes, and I think that that's a good idea. And number 4 is Gotham's day and night cycle. According to developers, this is the biggest version of Gotham ever in a video game. They also claim it is the most dynamic and interactive one yet, which is bold. There's 5 distinct boroughs to explore, and unlike the Arkham games, there are civilians occupying this Gotham. For once, you get to explore Gotham when it's relatively normal instead of being taken over by like an evil army or in the middle of a snowstorm. Progression in the open world works differently here too. Instead of the story taking place over a single night, it occurs over multiple nights. The bulk of the gameplay happens at night when the heroes are suited up and going out on patrol. Random street crimes don't get repeated if you fail, unlike the major story missions. But when you return to the Belfry, the Gotham Knights main base, it becomes daytime, and when you choose to go out again, it becomes night again, and all the crimes in the city reset. The city is supposed to change pretty drastically over the course of these several days. Like there's major events where Mr. Freeze's attack changes things, Harley Quinn takes over the asylum apparently, and these change the open world in pretty significant ways, but things can also go back to normal apparently. So major events happen on certain nights, but things go back to the status quo on a different night, which sounds very interesting. I'm not exactly sure how much of an impact it's going to have, but I'm also curious to see how it works out. At number 3, the traversal mechanics are actually pretty cool. For one of the most significant ways that each night is different from the other 3 is the traversal mechanics. Now, each character does get a bat cycle to drive around and does get a grappling hook, because of course they would. But apart from that, everybody has different ways to get around the city. With Nightwing, you have a glider. Yes, it does look a lot like Breath of the Wild. in Gotham. But the Red Hood gets this weird mystical step ability to jump through the air. There's also a vehicle that's used for fast travel, which is pretty handy. Some of the character-specific movement powers are kind of odd, particularly Robin's, I guess, teleportation thing. But I'll reserve judgment until I get the hands on the game to test it all out. It looks interesting, though. And number 2 is collectibles. Everybody remembers the many Riddler trophies in the previous Batman games. And you're wondering if they're back for this one. They aren't. They are apparently all unique collectibles, like hidden batarangs, Gotham street art, landmarks. I don't know exactly if that's all there is, but those are at least categorically some of them. But it's nice that there's only 100 rather than several hundred, because if you're sick of all the trophy hunting from the previous games, I mean, there's some, but like it's not going to wear out its welcome like the Riddler trophies. On the flip side, if you really loved hunting Riddler trophies, it's more basic this time around. It's not like collecting is gone, but it's not the same. And finally, at number 1, the game is coming out on October 21st. This is 4 days earlier than the original release date. It is only coming to the next-gen systems. So PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. So no PS4, no Xbox One. It does look a little bit better than the Arkham games. We do see some next-generation effects, so I get it. Polygon count's pretty high from the looks. It's going to be released on PC on both Steam and Epic. So if you're thinking, I only have one of these, I don't want to get another one, then don't worry, because you're good. Overall, I think it looks like a good game. I don't know that they've really hyped it in the way that they could have, because frankly, I have been wanting to jump back into this type of a game from these developers, whether it be Rocksteady or WB Games Montreal. Like, all of the Arkham games are good in their own right, and the style of game is particularly enjoyable, so it's nice to see that here, as well as some diversification of some of the gameplay elements. I am excited to play it, to be frank. I don't know if they're going to drop some big, like, bombshell between now and release to really ratchet up the hype. It's quite possible. But as it stands, it just straightforwardly looks like we're going to get a pretty good Batman Arkham-style game that takes place in at least a Batman universe. So for me, it seems like this is probably a solid bet on a pretty darn good game. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.